After the Kriegsmarine lost 3 of its most notable submariners in 1941, a massive rescue operation was launched to recover the only one alive, Otto Kretschmer. Throughout the following year, an elaborate plan was set in motion to bring back Kreschmer and 3 other German officials held at the Bowmanville prisoner of war camp in Ontario. The Germans were able to let the prisoners know of their plans, but they did not expect the Canadian intelligence to discover them. After several tunnels were excavated and preparations were carried out for months, the plan was for a submarine to retrieve the officials from the shore of Pointe de Maisonnette. However, when U-536 arrived at the appointed location, it was not fellow Nazis who were waiting for them. Surrender. The Type 7B U-99 German submarine was among the most successful boats during World War II. It sank 38 ships in 8 patrols against Allied shipping, damaged 5 more, and even took another one as a prize. U-99 was launched in March of 1940 under the command of the legendary Otto Kretschmer. The naval officer was known as Silent Otto because of his ability to use his submarine's silent running feature and for refusing to break radio silence during patrols. On March 17, 1941, after U-99 had just sunk the Swedish ship Kreschmer with the last of its torpedoes, the watch officer spotted a destroyer in proximity through the southeast of Iceland. The officer then went against Kretschmer's orders and directed the crew to submerge. Once the submarine was underwater, it was fixed on ASDIC sonars, and 2 British destroyers, HMS Walker and HMS Vanek, opened fire at them. The attack drove the U-boat below its recognized crush depth and severely harmed it. The commander had no other option, and when U-99 came to the surface, it was immediately greeted by a barrage of fire. Kreschmer then sent a message to British Captain Donald McIntyre, quote, "Captain to Captain, I am sinking. Please rescue my crew." McIntyre then gave orders to scuttle the submarine. 3 men lost their lives during the engagement. One of them, the engineering officer, perished when he re-entered the sinking submarine to open the hatch and speed up its drowning so that the British could not board it. However, a total of 40 men were rescued, and Kreschmer himself helped some of his crew cross towards the rescue nets hanging from the British vessel. The frigid waters eventually started to take a toll on him, but a British sailor climbed down and plucked him from the sea. All of the rescued men became prisoners of war, and McIntyre kept Kretschmer's binoculars as a souvenir. Captivity. In the span of only a few days, the German Navy had lost its top aces. While Kreschmer was held in London, top officials Joachim Schepke and Günther Prien lost their lives in depth charges by Allied convoys. The Nazis were worried that this triple loss would significantly affect their men's morale, and they did not disclose Prien's passing. Meanwhile, Kreschmer was being severely interrogated in England. A subsequent report stated that, quote, "His political views were less extremely Nazi than had been believed. On seeing the craters of a stick of bombs near Buckingham Palace, he was genuinely shocked that an attempt had been so obviously made by his countrymen to bomb the palace. He spoke English quite well, though he lacked practice. His whole demeanor was calm and quiet, and he seemed anxious to be friendly." The report continued, quote, "He gave the impression of being a quiet, deliberate man, and he looked more like a student than a U-boat captain. He prided himself on being able to take advantage of whatever the passing moment offered, and made no elaborate plans for attacking convoys. He admitted that he had become weary of the war some time ago, and latterly had got no satisfaction from sinking ship after ship." Kreschmer was awarded the Knight's Cross of the Iron Cross with oak leaves and swords during his captivity. This was the highest-ranking Nazi medal, and was given to him for sinking 44 enemy ships, from September 1939 to March 1941. In addition, he was also promoted in rank to corvette captain. After a year in No. 1 POW Camp Grisdale Hall in Cumbria, the prisoners were transported to Canada, and a plan began brewing immediately to rescue Kreschmer, his executive officer Hans Joachim Nebel-Dubritz, and 2 other submariners, Horst Elfe, captain of U-93, and Hans A., captain of U-433. The Nazis believed that retrieving a high-caliber official from enemy hands would prove a compelling propagandistic coup. Unforeseen circumstances. The Bowmanville Boys Training School operated from 1927 to 1941, when the government took the building near Lake Ontario to confine prisoners of war. Canadian officials had roughly 7 months to transform the school before the prisoners began arriving in late 1941. Barbed wire fences were built, along with 9 guard towers, gates, and barracks. Bowmanville eventually became known as Camp 30, and Kretschmer would spend much of his imprisonment there. On November 23, 1941, shortly after the camp opened, prisoner Ulrich Steinhilper escaped and was on the run for 2 days, but in the end was recaptured. He then escaped a second time, only to be captured again. In December, another prisoner tried to escape using a laundry truck, but he was discovered and detained in the Oshawa jail. Still, no attempt was as complex as Operation Kiebitz, a plan that involved the joint efforts of the imprisoned Germans and their rescuers. Developed by the Kriegsmarine in 1942, the operation was to be executed in September of 1943. The 4 officials were to escape from Camp 30 and travel 870 miles to Charleroi Bay in northern New Brunswick on the eastern coast of Canada. The escapees would then rendezvous with U-boat 536 at Pointe de Maisonnette. Other than Kretschmer, Nebel Duberitz was also a high-value asset for the Germans, as he was the former adjutant of Admiral Karl Dönitz. Both men were the primary reason for such a dangerous operation, as the Germans believed the benefit outweighed the risk. Through the International Committee of the Red Cross, the prisoners received coded messages at Camp 30. However, they were intercepted and cracked by Canadian military intelligence and police officers, who thoroughly surveyed all prisoner communications. The authorities in Canada resolved to keep quiet and let the Germans follow through with their plans. The operation would offer the Royal Canadian Navy a tantalizing opportunity to seize an enemy submarine in their own waters, a tremendous intelligence coup for the Allies. As a result, the prisoners went ahead with the plan and prepared for their escape. They built amazingly intricate tunnel systems, with the most notorious being in the northeast corner of Victoria Hall. It was 50 by 50 centimeters and had impressive lighting and ventilation systems that used tin cans for airflow. Supports were fitted every 1 to 2 meters, made of wood stolen from the camp attics. The dirt was taken out of the tunnels by a trolley, and then the men disposed of it using a bucket through a hole in the ceiling that led to the attic. Unbeknownst to the Germans, the whole operation was being closely watched by the Canadian officials. The prisoners continued to dig the tunnels in apparent secrecy, with one leading outside the camp. One fateful day, the weight of the soil in the ceiling collapsed, but since the guards were aware of the operation, they let it go. However, as the prisoners were finally ready to flee, the Mounties and military guards seized them, and all the tunnels collapsed. Only one prisoner managed to escape. His name was Wolfgang Heda. Counter-operation. The 4 original prisoners were apprehended, but Heda used the opportunity to escape over a barbed wire fence. The Kriegsmarine officer then made his way to the Canadian National Railways and traveled the 870 miles to Pointe de Maisonnette. However, a counter-operation led by Desmond Pierce had been launched by the Canadians to capture the Germans. Heda was not found until he reached the beach, where he expected to be picked up by his rescuers. Instead, Heda was captured by Canadian authorities, who were already in position to attack the German submarine. A portable surface radar array was established on the shore, and a task force was deployed with HMCS Rimouski in the lead. While the Canadian task force was hiding, U-536 arrived at the appointed time on the night of September 26, 1943. They then sent an arranged signal using light on the shore. However, German Captain Rolf Schauenberg soon realized something was wrong, as the hydrophones picked up the noise of the task force surrounding them. Schauenberg then opted to remain submerged. The Canadians executed several unsuccessful attacks on the U-boat throughout the night, with many failed depth charges. But the Germans managed to evade the enemy warships and got away. Despite its dexterity, in September of 1943, U-536 was sunk near the Azores 2 months later by British and Canadian warships, claiming 38 lives. The prisoners at Bowmanville were released only after the war ended, and after 7 years in captivity, Kretschmer was freed on December 31, 1947. The building then resumed its original operations as a school, and in 2013, the camp was designated a Canadian National Historic Site. In 1995, Sir Donald McIntyre returned Kretschmer's binoculars. Thanks for watching our video. Please subscribe to our Dark Documentaries channels for more historical anecdotes from the World Wars. Also hit the like button and the bell icon to get notified of our newest content. And don't forget to leave a comment to let us know your thoughts about this story.